I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that 75 to 90% of people don't train their forearms. It's almost like they forget they exist, which doesn't really make sense when you realize that your forearms are the only muscle that is visible at all times. They also are one of the most attractive body parts for women. Like, no woman has ever said, "Look at the size of his triceps, man, he's so hot." No, bro, like, train your triceps. I'm not telling you not to. However, to your priorities at the gym, please add forearms. Treat them in the same way you treat other muscles. Don't be like 90% of gym goers that never train their forearms in their lives and end up looking like this. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to train your forearms, how to actually make them bigger and grow them as someone who went through that journey himself. Now, how can you build bigger forearms? I would say that the first step towards growing your forearms and building your forearms, it starts with awareness. By actually being aware of their existence and importance, man. Because like, think about it for a second. Like, how many people do you see like that started training at like 13 or really young that were training forearms? Not many, right? Like, not enough people are so like intuitively attracted to training their forearms in the same way they are attracted to like training their abs or their chest because of Hollywood movies or whatever the reason is why we train our abs so much, or why we care so much about the size of our chest, for example. Nobody treats forearms in the same way we treat those other muscles, yet they are so important for all the reasons I just mentioned. Like, they are visible at all times, literally. Now, how can you be more aware of your forearms? How can you be more aware of training your forearms? Well, this video is the first step when you think about it. Watching those kind of videos and this kind of content that is telling you that forearms are important, it will ingrain in your brain the fact that training your forearms is important. It will tell your brain, it will say to your brain, like, oh, I haven't trained forearms this week, I maybe should do it, right? Watching those kind of videos and just educating yourself on the topic is really gonna make you more aware of it in the first place. The second step towards growing your forearms, towards building bigger forearms, is training them directly. Train your forearms directly. Let's think about it for a second about the 90% of gym goers that I mentioned at the beginning that don't train their forearms, that are not training their forearms directly. Because they are not training their forearms, apparently they should have really tiny forearms, right? However, they don't. Like, they don't have really tiny forearms, even though they are not as big as they could be. Why do you think that is? I think that comes from this concept. I just came up with it. Maybe it exists, I don't know, man, but it's collateral gains. Even though they are not training their forearms directly, like doing some exercise that directly targets their forearms, they are training their forearms indirectly, collaterally, like I just said, by doing some other exercises that are maybe training their forearms. However, the problem with relying solely on this, like solely relying on collateral training for your forearms, lies in the fact that when you only train your forearms like collaterally, which means that you're not doing exercises that directly target your forearms, you're not gonna get as much gains as you can. I'll give you an example, man. Deadlifts. We all do deadlifts, right? And in case you didn't know, you are training your forearms when you do deadlifts. That's why they hurt a little bit. But have you ever felt like your forearms burning after doing deadlifts? Probably not, right? But even if it hurts a little bit, because you are like collaterally training them a little bit, you are not reaching failure when you are training your forearms collaterally, right? When you are not targeting your forearms directly, it's much harder to reach failure and hypertrophy, which is something that will make your muscles grow in the first place. It's hard to do that when you're not training directly. That's why you should be training your forearms directly and not solely relying on collateral training. Now, in order to train your forearms directly, what are some of the exercises I recommend you in order to grow your forearms? The two exercises I recommend you are, and that have worked really well for me, that have given me results, are wrist curls, training them the both sides of the forearms. Like, you're gonna get this, I don't know what the name of the muscles is, but make sure that you train both the back and the front of the forearm with wrist curls and farmer walks. they have a funny name, but they are useful, man. Both of those exercises are really gonna like boost your forearms and make them look really big, and they're gonna burn your forearms, which is really gonna make you hit hypertrophy, and it's gonna make you reach failure, which equals more muscle growth. So man, wrist curls, the ones that are like this or this, and farmer walks, those two are really are all you need for your forearms. You don't need much else. Now, when should you train your forearms? I personally train them twice a week. I think that's a good number, and I train them along with my legs. Like on my leg days, I also do forearms. I train my forearms on leg days, and the reason why I train them on leg day and not on chest or back day is because on chest and back day, you are also using your forearms for the exercises, right? You are training them collaterally, but if you train them directly on your chest or back day, that is really gonna fatigue your forearms, which is not going to allow you to do optimal reps for your chest sets or your back sets, which is not going to allow you to have as much gains as you would if you didn't train your forearms that day. That's why training your forearms on leg day is what makes the most sense, because you don't have to worry about that on leg day. You are not training your forearms that much. Even if you are training shoulders like myself, you are not using them as much as you would on chest or back day. Leg day is the best day to train your forearms. I personally train them between sets. So when I'm doing calf raises, for example, I train forearms in between. So instead of resting between each calf raises set, I do forearms. Like I stand up, bro. Literally, I stand up. I grab one of those barbells, the ones that are already set, and I do wrist curls, man. So instead of doing 4 sets of calf raises and resting in between, I do 4 sets of calf raises, and in between I do 4 sets of wrist curls. It doesn't have to be complicated, man. Train smarter, bro, not harder. The last thing I'm gonna say, and the last like piece of advice I will give you is that, and this applies to everything, not only to training your forearms, but in this case it would really help you, man, is set an intention, man. Schedule when and at what time and what day you're gonna train your forearms. Like, bro, I don't remember the studies. Like, I've read them somewhere, maybe when I was reading some book. I think it was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Whatever, man. You don't care about that. You could just Google those studies and you would find them, man. But when you set an intention and when you schedule something and you say, I'm gonna train my forearms at this day, at this time, and at this place, the probabilities of you actually doing that thing increases like dramatically, bro, exponentially. The difference is so much that it's just not doing it. It ends up being somewhat stupid, man. Because when you set an intention and when you say, I'm gonna train this day at this time, it really increases the chances of you actually doing them, man. So set an intention, man. Say, I'm gonna train my forearms this day at this place at this time. And if you do that, eventually you're gonna do it. It's as simple as that, man. And this will help you for many other things, man, but whatever. And that's pretty much it, man. Training your forearms and building them to be bigger is not really as complicated as it seems. Set the bar higher, man. We both know you can.